Hello, this is Jack with Search Deploy Commit. I'm here with J0rd0s. Am I saying
Sure.
that
Yeah.
correctly? Okay. I was going to ask. I wasn't sure if that's what you were wanting to be called or how you pronounce
No,
it in
just
game,
just call
but
me by my in-game name is absolutely fine.
okay, perfect. So we have J0rd0s here on the call. He is one of the best known hosts in the game, at least to the best of my knowledge. He runs a clan of his own. And I'm so thankful that you're here on the call with us today
Yeah.
to talk about Warzone and the different things that we've both obviously experienced and enjoyed in the
Yeah.
game. So thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Likewise. Thanks for the invite.
For sure. So yeah, obviously want to kind of just jump right into it here. Uh, I want to ask something kind of different than maybe what you would be asked, in a typical interview in
Sure.
this format. But how did you get started, with the game when you first found Warzone?
Yeah.
Did you just find it on the App Store, or do you remember your first game?
First game, not so much, but in 2017, yeah, I was just looking for like a Risk clone. I used to have friends. We used to play Risk together, and then I started looking for like a Risk clone, and that's how I kind of got started in 2017-ish, I think, something like that. Yeah, first memorable game to me was joining like one of those Diplo games. It's a bit of a
Okay,
Warzone term, but
sure.
it's like, you take multiple days to take your turn and everything moves way slower
Yeah.
than a normal game. And first memorable one was, just a European map and just talking to people. Like, that's what I always enjoy about games in general, is just talking and
Mm,
strategizing with complete strangers. And I think that Warzone is perfect for that.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's what's drawn, me in, and I think a lot of people that play the game into Warzone is the kinds of conversations and the stories that come from
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Uh, I think especially about you specifically, I see you as a game host. Whenever I'm looking on multiplayer for open games, you always seem to have some epic, map created or something going on. And I try and join when I can. And I mean, I was looking at your lists of previous games and it looked like, I mean, you've hosted a lot of these
Yeah.
over the
Yeah,
last
no idea.
4 or 5 years.
Yes.
So how did you first get started as a game host? Like
Uh,
when you decided to start doing that, did you
well, there
just
were like certain like
start?
the yeah. Gotta give a shout out to like a player called Tom Quinn, for example, or Sir Leg a lot. Like
Okay.
those are their in-game names, but like they hosted a little bit out of the ordinary game. So what I noticed in the beginning that I started playing is that a lot of people they don't play with AIs, for example. And then when people surrender or when they don't make their turn. Then they get kicked and their whole territory just goes neutral, right? Little things
Yeah.
that used to bother me around about hosting, and like these two players, like they showed me that there's a lot of things possible within the game mechanics as they are, even though they're pretty limited by itself. But they show me that there's like another game possible. By the way, I don't make maps. Like I purely look at a map and then I
Oh
make
yeah.
like a scenario on that map or whatever. But
Sure.
yeah, I try to like as a non-premium member, you get to host like two games. Do you have to? You can have two open games at the same time, and I try to keep two open games at all times. Like I got like a couple of templates and series that I'm running, and sometimes I feel inspired, or when I see a new map, and I just start. Yeah, I just start being creative. Like it kind of it
That's awesome.
scratches that itch for me, where you're like building stuff and you're in like a scenario, and yeah. When
Yeah.
did I start
Well, that was
hosting?
kind of my next question is, how do your ideas come to you? Like, how do you decide, this is, I mean, the most recent one that you created was, these different planets and you have
Yeah,
aliens and
sure.
all these things that you put together into games. And I mean, we're talking about, I mean, what do you typically do? Is it 40 people in a
Yeah,
match?
no,
Is that your
exactly. So,
typical player count?
yeah, like it was my, like I always wanted to host, and like there were like certain people that I would join. Also, how they run their games. Like sometimes people have like certain rules, but they don't abide by the rules. So I just had a very clear structure of how I was going to do things, and it started around like 2018. I got to a sufficient level where I was able to host for 30 to 40 people. And then there's like certain maps that unlock
Wow.
after that. Now I'm level 54, but like from level 45 ish, you can host for 40 people.
Yeah.
And like one of the core tenets for me is like I want to host a game that's available to as many people as possible, and yeah, basically just create as much chaos as possible and like have different outcomes. So yeah, the alien map, for example, yeah, no, I'm big sci-fi fan, fantasy strategy
Yeah.
sort of thing, so it just flows natural where I just see the map and I'm like, this is like nobody hosts on this map, so that makes it all the more attractive for me to host a game on that map and
Yeah.
kind of make it work. And yeah, try to just also, inspire players to stick around and try hosting their own games. And yeah, that's basically it.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's really great. I mean, honestly, a big part of, some of the games that I started with, hosting was really attractive to me, specifically from some of your games in particular,
cool.
just from the stories that are created. And so, getting to that level, 45, 47 that you're talking about was really like a big goal for me. And I think that's a really interesting part of the game that players are trying to get to that when they start getting
Hmm.
inspired by players like
Yeah.
yourself. Is there any? I mean, you're talking about some of these games that you host have so many details and things. Is there any kind of planning that you do? I know you said you have some templates, but what does that look like when you first get an idea to start a game and host it? What does that planning look like? I guess a quick
Well,
summary of
like
what
for,
you would
for
do.
every series that I host, like usually the first three versions are just absolute shit. Like they're super disorganized, and like people, start out with half the armies than they should, and basically it's just me throwing stuff against the wall, and then it works. And
Sure.
what's a weird thing is that the title of the game actually uh how do I say, like it like for okay, so let me just give you an example. I think that's more clear. Like I started hosting like these Viking games, right? And it would
Yeah.
attract a
Sure.
certain kind of player that wasn't in the diplo mood, in the diplomacy games mood. So like
Ah.
they always went off the
Sure.
rails. So that's like a series for me that I had to discontinue after a while because it just only attracted people that same thing with like I also did like Italian maps. Like I would used to look at just a country and just host the thing on that, but I'm going more like as I'm
Sure.
getting more skillful at hosting and know what all the settings mean. um yeah, I just tend to like do it a little bit more intricate. So I have this Game of Thrones one, for example, where I sort of set it up in a way where there's like three invading uh, players, sort of, and then everybody is just
Yep.
up for themselves, but they already have like a starting army. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Like I like those games because it has like I've hosted about like nine of them now, and they always have like a different outcome, really depending on the players. And I think um, like
Sure.
when you host when you join a normal game, like it's usually just the bigger army wins, or maybe there's like some player that strategizes well. But my games always have like a high luck factor, so it really puts pressure on the diplomacy
Hmm.
part. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. I tend to gravitate more towards those games when I was starting, and now I enjoy hosting that for other people. Um,
That's
yeah.
awesome. So, I mean, is there a favorite scenario that you like to set up? I know you mentioned a couple already, but you found that some maybe that you would have liked a lot,
Yeah.
maybe you just don't get to do as much. I don't know if there's a favorite that you had to cut out, but
No, well, like it would be fun to make the Vikings game work just because it's such an epic setting, But for it, I
yeah,
just can't
sure,
get it off the ground. Also, the maps are kind of lacking. Like the map is usually very important. Like it needs to be simple, but still like there's this map where you basically have England, but it's also with all the castles. And like
sure,
that's a
yep,
perfect one because all the castles give you a different bonus, which ties into how much bonus they can give. That is something that you can customize for yourself.
sure,
So what I like to do is, you turn the commerce on, so you have the gold, which is, an extra layer of how do I say, for people to get into it. Forgot the term,
yeah,
but
right,
So why the Viking games didn't work was also because it was too chaotic. You had like a map that was like 2,500
Sure.
territories, 900 bonuses. Like by the time that you actually, most people had already given up. Another thing
Sure.
that you can host a game and only invite the players that you want, that you can rely on, that you've played before. But I don't like that, because you're basically shutting out all these new players that may be those players that you want after a while, right? Like these highly specialized
Yeah.
games. And I've been in some, like they were good fun, but yeah, I like hosting for the masses, honestly.
Yeah, right. And I think the masses appreciate that, and
Thank
that's why
you.
I wanted
Yeah,
to
no,
interview you.
thank you.
And recognize. Yeah, for sure. So I guess, when you talk about these types of games, especially, more diplomatic style
Yeah.
games, I think that's something that I find myself drawn to. I'm also a board gamer, so you know, games where conversations are happening
Yes.
is when people really get
Exactly.
engaged, and I think that it really they can connect, right? And that's why we're having this kind of
Yeah, yeah.
conversation
No,
now, I
I
think.
fully agree. Like that's what draws me in the end, is the real the interaction that you have with people and how they
Yeah.
behave, and it's always so random. And like that's the thing that I like about Warzone. Like you call me the clan leader, and a host, like, but that's really humbling to me, because I don't see myself like that. Like I just created a Discord and it really
Right.
got out of hand. Like it's just, like it's not nothing was planned, but I noticed that there was like a
Sure.
lack of community, sort of, where people could meet.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
yeah, usually there's a Discord being created around a certain game, and I noticed that a lot of people just, they just like to chit chat and talk about different things. Meanwhile, the game is going on in the background, and yeah, I like that.
Right.
I like that. And Warzone is kind of lacking in that department, so yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad that you've put that server together, and all the things that you're doing for the game. Specifically, I think hosting is really what stands
I
out, and
agree. Yeah. No, that's
um
the bread and butter for sure. It should be the bread and butter as well.
yeah.
Like the Discord and stuff, like it shouldn't be necessary. Like you have also have these games where you have to join the Discord and everybody gets named
Oh
after
yeah,
their
sure.
territory and I have nothing against that. But like what I feel like a lot of hosts, like they try to make things too ruly, right? Where they need to, like, you
Sure.
need to join as this country, and you have a long lists of rule that you like. Usually in my Diplo games, it's just declare a turn before attacking, and two if you're coming out of an alliance. But that's just to enforce that kind of extra, you know, diplomacy aspect, that people go out of their way to
Sure.
actually take the time to type a message and scheme behind the
Right,
scenes. And
right.
yeah, it's weird. So you were asking me about other games. Like I had some games that I'm particularly proud of, sort of, because I just threw things at the wall and it just worked out so fine that it just fits the scenario. So I have this Holy Land game, for example. And I
Okay.
just said, like, okay, I'm just gonna do it, because you can add wastelands where they have a
Right.
certain neutral thing on them, right? So I give everyone a big starting army, and I put so many wastelands that it's basically impossible for anybody to get any bonuses except for a couple, right? And it's this really
Huh.
slow burner where really, because to me, like, I also like it if it's a little bit historically accurate, right?
Yeah.
And waltzing over half of Europe with the biggest army. I mean, that is a thing, but it shouldn't be every game, right? Like I like the
Yeah.
tactical aspect sometimes as well, right? Where people don't need to overextend themselves in the beginning, and it turns into this weird, like, that game. Yeah, it's just something that I just tried and it just worked, and now it's like a sort of like a staple thing that I'm just hosting every now and again. Um,
Yeah, I think you have a really you do a really good job of having a good variant too. I think that's something that players probably also appreciate is your games tend to have different elements. They're not all the same type of game,
no,
which is good. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about Warzone is that you're able to sort of write your own story. And I mean, I was
yes,
going to ask you this. Do you feel that in some ways, I mean, you're kind of almost like a DM for a D&D
sure,
group in a way,
exactly.
right? I don't know if you would
Yeah, yeah,
consider
yeah.
that
No,
similar,
it is similar.
but I think in some ways it
Sure.
is.
Sure. Like I set a game up.
Are there any other tips Oh yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
no, yeah,
Sorry.
no, but no, you're absolutely right. Like the dungeon master aspect, sort of like I try to keep a short leash on the game, but there's always, like I'm never in my games to win or anything, right? So I'm really just on the side and
Right.
trying to direct people in a certain way, but like I can't fault people for steamrolling another player like that. I see that as a sort
Sure.
of like a fault in the scenario, right? Like I like it when it's like
Yeah.
balanced. So but all my games, for example, like they usually have like high reinforcement cards that are fairly easy
Sure.
to get because I like big armies. I like big,
Yeah.
like so
That's awesome.
like that's also like for example with an AI player in that alien invasion game. Like I like to present this scenario that where there's also the random factor of the AI that makes horrible choices, but if you just give a big enough army to that, you can create like sort of like a teamwork precedent, even though everybody in the end is playing for themselves, right? Can only be one,
Yeah.
but yeah, like big armies, fast reinforcement cards. If you have a medieval map, sometimes I cut out the airlift cards because I think they're, or the deployments. Like, if you look at medieval towns, like they can only deploy in the town or in the castle. Like they can't deploy
Yeah.
out in the fields, out in the mountains. Doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
So I try to do it a little bit in a sort of historically accurate way. But yeah, but it's a trial and error, honestly. Like I've hosted so many shit games over the years, I can't even, I can't even begin.
Well, I mean, that's how you get
Yeah,
there, right? I
exactly,
suppose.
exactly.
I mean, I guess, after all of those things, I think you cover a lot of good tips for people that are trying to host, and I don't know if there's anything, if there's one tip maybe that you would make sure you told a new host or somebody that wants to get into hosting Warzone games, what would that be?
Uh, Pick a map that you like, but that's underappreciated, not hosted very often, and just take it slow. Like let the people build their own stuff and learn from that. Like for example, when I make a scenario and somebody points out a flaw, like I don't say like, okay, I will change it the next time I host. Like I go into that scenario immediately and change the template so the next time it doesn't happen.
Mm,
Big tip, yeah, no, don't try to over control everything, let it just flow. And if it doesn't work, fuck it. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much.
yeah.
Like there's always going to be a winner, there's always going to be, you know
Right.
so yeah, like in the end, and that's also what I
That's
like
cool.
about Warzone is also how I try to like you a clan leader. I don't see myself as a clan leader. I just bought the clan that
Sure.
was on a discount, was like long
Yeah.
dream for the thing. So that's just it. But um yeah, like laid back, people move in and out. Like also in the Discord, we've seen a lot of
Hmm.
players that, like after a while you get burned out, especially if you're playing like 40 games
Sure.
at the same time and you skip
Yeah.
like 2 days and half of the games you're
Right.
booted out of. Like that's all. Like just keep the rules on a minimum, I would say. Just the basic. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, new tips for players. Yeah.
That's great.
Just stick by your guns. Host
That's awesome.
stick by your own rules.
I really like that. I really like that. I think some people might be scared to host a game, and I think just not some people not having to worry about messing up on something. It's gonna
No,
be
it's
okay.
fine.
You're
It's
gonna
fine.
you're gonna be able to
And
figure
what
it
you're
out.
saying now, like honestly, like the player base is super forgiving in the end.
Yes,
Like I've never,
I would
like
agree.
sometimes people complain about certain things, and I will look into it, or I will give
Sure.
my version of, my side of the story. But like I notice that everybody is super
Yeah,
appreciative of everything that most people do. And if a game is shit, I'm also expecting them to tell me. So yeah, I mean, yeah,
that's
take the
awesome.
criticism, move on.
Right, right. Well, I guess, to keep this moving, I really want to ask everybody that I have on this podcast, tell me your favorite game that you've either created or played in. Like a favorite Warzone memory, something that happened,
Uh,
or maybe a game
yeah, I
itself.
would say like it was I don't know, like those two players that I mentioned earlier. So the Tom Gwynn
Hmm.
guy, he had this like huge map stretching all the way from from Europe all the way to Japan, basically. And Like what
Yeah.
he did
Wow.
was like he did like crazy reinforcement cards, right? Because that's also a setting where you can do it like progressive, so determining on the amount of turns have passed or territories taken. And like if you played your, if you played the game right and you made sure that you took a territory every time, which is how you get cards, then you would get like all of a sudden
Sure.
like 22,000 troops, right? And like it just opened up my eyes like to the possibilities that other games. Sir Legalot, he
Uh-huh.
hosted like a medieval thing on that England map with the castles, and like things really went really fast into like these alliances, and it was just like this big massive battle over England. And yeah, that's
Mm.
awesome to me, where everybody, kind of gets into the role, and, and you have like these coordination things, and then things work out, and sometimes they don't. And, it's fun. Like, I like that aspect about
Yeah.
it. So those are two, I would say, like memorable scenarios that I know. Another memorable game is just um, where I was on this Europe map, and like the host had these settings, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, but like all the players, like they just
Sure.
one by one, they just left, and I remember how sort of soul crushing it was, where you had like plans made out to fight somebody, and then they would just turn gray. So in my games,
Uh,
what I always have is always have the AI on. Um, some people don't
mm.
like it and they're annoying as fuck, but in the end, they do add this extra gameplay element, even if the player decides to go. Right, so it keeps things moving.
Yeah.
It also gives people an opportunity to expand without, you know, starting to fight each other like they're fighting an AI now. So yeah, I like those
Right.
settings sort of, but it's all personal.
That's
Like I'm really
awesome
hosting all the games that I would like to see sort of like it's
to play in. Sure.
not into the
That's
competitiveness,
so
not
cool.
into the competition sort of
Sure.
aspect. Like like some people are really pro and they really play all the ladders and stuff like that. But that's not how the game is
Right.
for me. It's always been this laid back. Like I play it on the toilet. I always joke that I,
Yeah.
like I play it on the toilet. you know, you guys.
But I mean, I think that's what's so versatile about the game is you can literally play
Yeah,
it anywhere.
exactly.
I mean, you could do part of a move and
Yeah.
come back, and I think that's a really, good question that I should ask next is, you know, as a longtime player, that's a great aspect of the game, but as a longtime player, is there anything that you would like to see improved as not only maybe a player, but a host? Is there anything? Obviously, some people might have really long lists, but
Yeah. No.
uh, you know,
Yeah, but like then we're going to, because I'm hosting a lot, like there's certain things that I notice,
hmm
but in the long term or in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that it really matters that much. Like it's these little things that start to annoy over time, but like for playing on the toilet, it's fine. Like that's just the sort of game that it is. Like it's not,
sure,
it's a on the go risk variant, right? Where you just you have like
right,
your certain moments and you have your standout games, and even now sometimes games are just filled with people that don't want to talk or want to be assholes or
sure,
want to be trolls. Like it doesn't, and that shouldn't matter. Like, and I like that you could just walk
yeah,
away from a game without it matters that much. Like I don't, a
mm,
thing that I would change, yeah, just make more options available that are literally one line of code away. And with that, I mean, for example, now you have like cities, and you could build a city, and you could determine the cost of a city for you to build a city, but it always only generates one income. Like it's literally one line of code for you, or maybe a slider, whatever, but it's not that hard to also implement how much a city actually gives you, right? How much it provides for you after you
mm,
build it. Another thing is like these commanders, right? Like this should just be an option for you to host if you're already level 50, or after you hosted 50 games, like you should get something in return for that. So map
mm,
makers don't get paid. People make mods. They're sometimes messy, sometimes they work. Usually they work. Don't get me wrong, but it's like these
sure,
things, like they
sure,
should be more flushed out. I would say, like there should be things where this already gets incorporated into the game. But then again, like I'm not on the technical aspect of this. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But
Right. These are things
yeah,
you'd like to see
exactly. Yeah.
improved,
Like the
obviously.
commanders, for example, now they're behind this paywall. But I think, that if you give me a commander for
Mm,
my, for a Holy Land game or an England game, with all the castles, like people actually have a king.
sure.
Like that creates a new
Yeah. Right.
dynamic all in all, right? I like those
Yeah.
things. I like getting creative with the tools that I get. So yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, right. So yeah, the host that uses tools to make awesome games wants more tools,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I'm never
And I
done.
think I think that's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah, it's a fucking Lego box for me. Like that's also yeah,
Yes, right. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I think, you've been in this for, I mean, since 2017, it looks
hmm
like. I mean, we're talking 5 years here, and what is it about? And you've probably said this, multiple times since we've been talking, but what has stood out to you over the years? Even if it's just one thing that keeps bringing you back to the game.
Honestly, the camaraderie. I like the camaraderie that like all these people. Like I started to know them over the years, right? So they're like part of my
Mm,
sort of Warzone family type thing, Like and it's fun. Like I like the Discord for, because like the game has players from all over the world, so you can always get like a different perspective on things just by talking to people, and I
yeah.
like I like that. Yeah, besides that, it just scratches my itch for just creating something and just, having fun and a little bit of tactical stuff in the side, But yeah, I've been burned out as well, where I just left the game alone. But yeah, camaraderie, like
Sure.
I will always keep returning to Warzone because it's the same game now as it was 5 years ago. Like, and it will always remain
Yeah.
that. And there's always this human aspect to the game, that's just super fascinating to me. Yeah, it's just super fascinating.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions I had for you. But if there's anything else you'd like to add, I just had such a great time
Cool.
talking to you about all these
Yeah.
different things. I think the game in general just needs more conversations like this. So I'm just so pleased and happy that we got to
Yeah, no,
spend
I
this,
agree.
short half hour together
Absolutely. And
talking
like
about
what
it.
you're doing now is exactly what Warzone sort of needs. Like it needs, because it kind of like, I see so many people from so many different cultures and backgrounds and, like
Yeah.
doing different things, but there's not really like they always move in and out, and that's fine. Like I like the laid
Yep.
back aspect, but there should be
Another
more of a
benefit.
community thing around all this, because it lends itself so well to create a community around. So thank you for what you're doing. Like this is, yeah,
Well, thanks.
exceeds my
Jeez.
expectations.
Awesome. Well, hey, J0rd0s, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us on Search, Deploy,
likewise.
Commit. And, would love to have you again in the future. And, looking forward to all the other games that you're
Yeah,
going to
cool.
create.
Thank you
So
very much.
is there any plug that I can shoot out for you? I don't know if I should,
No.
recommend the
Yeah,
Discord
no,
channel
sure. Yeah,
for you
recommend the
or
Discord.
anything,
Yeah,
but
exactly. Warzone Dragons.
okay.
Like people are just free to join, but also if you don't play Warzone, just it's fine. It's just a hangout.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't have Warzone, you should
Yes,
get it.
that's
So
absolutely. At least give it a fucking try. Like that's what I.
yes, please. Please try it.
All right.
All right. Well,
Cool.
hey, thank you so
No
much,
worries.
J0rd0s.
And
Thank you
see ya.
guys. Have a good rest of your
Thank
of your
you.
day, and we'll join you again here hopefully in the next
Cool.
couple episodes with Search, Deploy,
Thank you very
Commit.
much. Ciao, ciao.